everyone, welcome to Workplace Matters with Grace Adagi, your HR consultant on workplace issues. Wow, it's a beautiful day to be coming your way, and I'm so excited that today it's not just myself in the room. We're going to be having a guest today, and his name is Segun Arokoyo, an oil and gas engineer that works out of Calgary, and he's just going to be looking into the topic that we have today. So we're going to be having a robust discussion. So I want you to stay tuned and benefit from this discussion. So the topic today is remote working dynamics, and we're looking at it from the employee perspective. So what is the employee's perspective on remote working? What are the challenges? What are the benefits? Those are things that we want to look at today. So basically, today is based on an interview with Segun Arokoyo. So Segun, you're welcome on the show today.
Thank you very much, Grace, for having me.
Awesome. We're very excited that you're here to look into this topic with us. So yeah, like I said, it's on remote dynamics from employees' perspective. Can you please explain to us what it means to work remotely?
Yeah, thank you very much. So working remotely in the recent months have become something that everyone keeps talking about because of the environment that we find ourselves. Again, just before I go into the question, I would like to say that we are currently in an unprecedented and challenging times, and things keeps evolving, and we just need to adjust and adapt to the new environment that we find ourselves. So having said that, we're talking about remote working, and a lot of people actually get it confused. When they're working from home, everyone just say, oh, I'm working remotely, but there's actually a distinction between working from home and working remotely. So I will look at working remotely in this context. If you're working outside of your traditional office environment, so you have a designated place where your employer had set aside for everyone to work. If for any reason you're not working out of that office on a daily basis and you're working from your home, or you're working at a different location that is not provided by the employer, you can consider that as working remotely. However, working from home, I see that as a subset or an element of working remotely as well. Working from home, I look at it in the context of, something that is a temporary setup. So that is not what is designed for you in your job requirement. But, maybe situations like what we're currently experiencing right now, the pandemic, has actually forced a lot of people, employees, or even employers to make the decision that, hey, you've got to work from your home. So it's meant to be a temporary thing. And by the time things stabilize and get back to normal, the expectation will be that some of those jobs return back to their traditional working environment. So I would want your listener to take note of that. When you say you're working remotely, does your job description actually have it in the contract that you're to be working remotely, which means you're not to be at the same location with other people? Or is it a temporary thing that you need to, work on, and over time you get through it?
Awesome. That's what food for thought for all people out there to try and understand what it means to work remotely and working from home. And I like what you said by saying that working from home is a subset of working remotely. You're absolutely right. And thank you for that. So our second question to you will be, I understand that you are an employee of an oil and gas company. And I've spoken with you in the past, and there were days that you had to work from home. So I just want to find out from you that what were your expectations when you were told that you were going to be working from home? And and how has it been?
Yeah, actually, it's been very interesting. Again, like I said, for me, in my own case, working from home was actually something that came up as a result of the global health challenge that we find ourselves. Typically, like I said, I will have worked outside of my traditional office in downtown Calgary. Having said that, making that adjustment was very tough in the beginning. I must be honest with you, because this is something that I'm not, traditionally set up for. So again, we made a decision that most employees working out of the Calgary office work from their home. I think sometime starting around March 15, middle of March. And literally, I only had my little laptops. My home office wasn't set up properly for a productive working environment. So the first 2 weeks was very challenging. I must be, honest with you. And because at that time, I really didn't know how long it was going to take for me to get back to my desk in the office. So I was just trying to adjust and, get things running. But 2 weeks into working from home, I realized that this is a serious business, and we might not be going back anytime soon. So at that point, I needed to upgrade the workstation I have at home, to an extent, have most of the things I have access to in the office, make sure I have this at home as well. And that was when the work began, to be a little bit less stressful. And then productivity went back up. The first 2 weeks, productivity was actually going on the decline. Reason being, in my office, I've got like two, fairly standard monitors, and working at home, just working on the computer. It's a different experience, especially when your job function requires you to just oppose and flip from screen to screen. So, having said that, it could be very challenging. It's a totally different environment, working at home, completely different from when you're working from your traditional office setup, because there are some distractions that come with working at home, and we must be open to this. If you've got families, you've got pets around you, you don't get to see those when you're in your office, where your employer had set up for you. But when you're in your home, it looks as if you're still at home, as if you're not at work, because you're still seeing, the couch that, when you sit on the couch, you're meant to be relaxing. You're still seeing the dining table where you're meant to be eating, and, it's right beside you. So it takes time for you to psychologically get yourself adjusted to the new working environment. And in my own case, like I said, it took me about 2 weeks. And that was when I get my, foot on the pedal again, and productivity went up, significantly up. So yeah, I would say my expectations for those working at home is make sure you're properly set up, make sure you've got good internet, and make sure your employer and those that you're working with, they understand your schedule, and they know when to reach out to you, and times when you're available, when you're not available, and also ensure that you don't get too engrossed, in the work. Make sure you take your routine breaks, and get things moving that way.
Awesome. Yeah, that was actually going to bring me into the next question. And I think you just touched on that. Like, I was going to ask you that how were you able to manage work life balance while working from home? Was there a time that you spent too much time on the computer, or was there a time that you felt like you were doing so much more than when you were in the office environment? How was it like? And how did you navigate that?
Yeah, it's a tough part, but I think by the time you get into the routine of working from home and you're doing it professionally how it ought to be, over time things will evolve and crystallize in a way that you're able to actually differentiate and have your time properly allocated. You talked about work-life balance. Again, for your viewers, we know work-life balance. Essentially, we're talking about you prioritizing your day. You've got, if your work demands you to put in 8 hours a day, you've got 24 hours in one day. You've got about 8 hours, to rest at the end of the day and sleep. So it means You have 8 hours of work. You have maybe another 2 hours of transportation commuting back and forth. And if you're working from home, you get to save that. So that's part of the advantages of working from home that I've seen. Then you've got another, I would say, another maybe 6 hours of time for yourself. And then you have the remaining 8 hours for you to actually sleep at night and, wake up the following day healthy and fit to get to work for the following day. So it's always very challenging to strike the balance. Okay, am I supposed to work 8 hours? Okay, if I'm supposed to work 8 hours, but for some reason I discover I'm working 10 hours because I'm working from home, I'm not going anywhere, and I get to put in more work. That's where the work-life balance starts to, take an unbalanced structure, and it could quickly evolve to other issues like stress, issues even with mental health and all of that. So, and that's why I really appreciate this question that you have asked. It is very important for us while working at home, still make sure you have your schedule laid out. If you're going to start your work at 8 o'clock and you know you will be done at 4 p.m. or 5 p.m., try to keep to that time. That's part of discipline. Keep to that time. If you know you've got 3 hours of your evening for your family, try as much as possible to make sure they get that 3 hour of your time. Because the moment you start to let your work slide into your personal time, family starts to have issues. Spouse starts to, complain about, the other half working too much or not doing things that are meant to be done at home. And that's where all this issue gets, started and evolve into things that are undesirable. So, in my own case, it's something I've continued to work on. I do have my calendar set up. My work start at 8 a.m. in the morning. I work through 5. There are few days where I tend to work into the evening, but those are days where maybe during the day I had to quickly do maybe one or two personal things, and I felt I've used like an hour that meant to be sitting and working, and then I use that to compensate in the evening. So I do that because again, we need to be frank with ourselves. You have to be fair with your employer. Your employer is paying you for certain duration of hours. You've got to put in that time. Otherwise, you don't justify what they're paying you. So, in summary, it is very important, very critical for everyone working from home not to lose the sight and think you've got an endless hour in the day. No, you still have a limited hours. The day is still 24 hours. You still have to rest and sleep and have a good night rest to be fit for the following day. If you're doing two jobs, you still need to make sure you allocate it properly and make sure you have enough room to take both jobs. However, family first, your health first. You can only go to work if you're healthy. If you're down and you're in the hospital, there is no work for you and there is no income. So you've got to take care of yourself. Thank you.
Thank you very much for stressing that, letting everyone out there know that our health is very important as well as family. Because one thing I have come to realize is with employers, it's great when you have a contract signed up to do a certain hours of job. However, with your family, you have your whole life signed up as a contract. And so you need to make sure that is very, very taken care of, as well as your health, because with no health, there is no job, like you said. And also, just to stress it to our viewers out there, the points that you've made, working from home has to be set up by employers to ensure that they are setting up the employees up for success. That is, it has to be productively done. And also, you've also mentioned that with respect to work-life balance, there has to be good time management. So you have to be able to manage your time and also be able to allocate time properly and take your breaks when you need to. Don't stay glued to your computer. It's not good for your health when you stay 8 hours on the computer. Take your eyes off once in a while. Go for your break time. And the last thing you said, which I also really love, and I mentioned it in our last video, is about the contract you signed with an employer is to work a certain number of hours. Do not make it an habit to cheat your employer. If you signed up for a particular time of hours, don't do short of it. make sure you fulfill your part of contract. You know why? You are people of integrity, and you need discipline to continue to maintain that. Wow, awesome. So this brings us to the end of this show today. And just while wrapping up, I would like Segun Arokoyo to give advice to employers out there. From employees' perspective, what do you think employers need to be doing well to ensure that people they have set up to work from home or work remotely have all the necessary resources to do their job productively?
Yes, so for the employers out there, you've got to understand again, like I started, what I said was, there's a slight difference between, working from home, which is meant to be a temporary, contract, to, setting your employees to work permanently remotely. So again, employers, you've got to have a policy around what you define as your expectations, the guidelines for anyone working outside of your traditional office where you're paying rent or you own. So having said that, the policy needs to come, the policy needs to be robust. The policy needs to understand that, in as much as you want to drive results, your people should be your number one priority. The safety and health of your people needs to be a topmost priority for you. So, and if that's the case, you've got to look at the situation you're putting them in, and have a well-structured guidelines for those that are going to be opting for working remotely. And on it, those that are going to be forced to work remotely on a temporary basis due to events and circumstances around them, you need to be proactive. You need to make sure you're checking up on them. Have a routine scheduled check-in time. Whether it's weekly, whether it's every other day or something like that. Checking on your employees, checking how they're doing. Checking on them their day. How's their day been? How are you adjusting to this new lifestyle? And stuff like that. And you'll be surprised, you'll be amazed what you get to hear back in response. When they talk, when they respond, listen, take time to listen to them and see what they're going through. And secondly, employers, you've got to make sure that your employees have the right tools to actually work remotely and function, because you don't want productivity to start to go on the decline. And for you to maintain productivity or even take advantage of the situation to even ramp up and make some progress, you've got to have your employees set up the right way. If they need laptops, if they need tablets, whatever technology they need, you've got to make sure they have this at their disposal. When it comes to internet, your employees will need to rely on their home internet. If the work you're giving them requires them to have certain bandwidth of internet, you've got to make provision to support them. Maybe this is something they cannot afford. You've got to have a plan in place where you give some sort of, support, to employees, because you're taking additional resources from their working from home that they ordinarily might not have required. And thirdly, again, you have your employees, and for you to get the result that you look out for, or what you've said before, your shareholders, you've got to make sure your employees happy. You've got to make sure they're healthy, because at the end of the day, if your employees they're working and they're not happy about the job, that's where your turnover starts to increase. They start looking for another job. If you're putting your employee in a condition where he or she doesn't have all the right resources to function, and the employee is seeing himself or herself as not being productive as he or she ought to be, that's where you start having issues with stress. You've got to make sure the stress management of your employees is actually at the centerpiece of your policy, and then make sure you craft everything around it. And periodic checking is very important. Don't leave them alone. Set expectations for them. Like I mentioned about your schedule, also have expectations set up for them. You're meant to deliver this, in 3 days. If it's not done in 3 days, look for a way to reach out and say, hey, what's going on? Are you having issues? And also, employers, don't forget this. Your employees are at different levels in their career life, okay? You have employees that still need mentorship, that need some support. They're not fully independent. If you're putting them to work from home, make sure you periodically check on them and see what help they need. Otherwise, they're just going to be there struggling. They're not getting the job done. They are frustrated. And at the end of the day, it's not a win-win for anyone. But you want to have a win-win situation. So I will leave your viewers with this. Again, I do hear this. When life gives you a lemon, what do? You make a lemonade out of it. So you've got to, in every situation, look for the good inside it and build around it. Thank you very much.
Wow, those were great advice. Employers out there, please watch this video over and over and take those advice on board. And today, Segun Arokoyo mentioned that you need to have a policy in place. Don't forget, the place to contact for your policies and your employee handbook is Dynamic Resource Solutions Limited, who is sponsoring this event. So if you need anything about your employee handbook, you need to do your policies and procedures, you need to train your employees or build team in a way that is very collaborative to the success of your organization, contact Dynamic Resource Solutions Limited. We have our contact details on the screen for you. And as you go through this week, remember, make safety of your employee your number one priority. And especially in these unprecedented times, you need to make sure you are looking after your employee. You owe them a duty of care. I want Segun to just tell everyone and wish them a very wonderful week. Segun, over to you.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Grace, on the program. And to your viewers, do have an awesome weekend. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you very much, Segun. Thank you for coming on the show today. We really appreciate you. You've come to share your knowledge, your experience with us, which is really awesome and fantastic. These are incredible advice that you've given out there for the employers as well as the employees. And to everyone out there, I hope that as you go on the journey in your work, that it will be a successful one. Thank you. Have a great week.